Calling to order the special council meeting of Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. Please call the roll.
Mr.
Here.
Ms. Atra?
Here.
Ms. Feldman?
Here.
Ms. Bowden? Here. Mr. Lemay?
Here.
Mr. Gentile?
Here.
Dr. Wong?
Here.
All right, this is a special council meeting requested by the city council for the further consideration of the Charter Review Commission report and ordinance 2025-01. This will be the third reading of the ordinance.
Are we going to do the pledge?
And just give me a second. And I'll open it up to council for,
Do the pledge?
sure, we can do a pledge. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so that brings us to the first agenda, which is the review of the Charter Commission report. Is there anything further by council that you wanted to discuss? Anything? Move on to the next. Yes, Mr. Gentile.
I'm in favor of accepting the recommendations of the Charter Review Commission and submitting the question to the electors in May of this year. Not because I was the council member who introduced the ordinance 2024-13, which formed the commission, but because of the persuasive report the commission members crafted. Members of the audience have said that members of council have not made changes to the recommendations after they made their arguments. One member of the audience stated that members of the council were disrespectful to the armed forces because it did not accept a suggestion that residency requirements be reduced or eliminated. Not being persuaded by an argument is not disrespect. I have heard Mr. Rice's reasoning on multiple occasions and taken it into account. Speaking for myself, I do not find his position persuasive. As I have said before, the better course of action is to institute residency requirements and wait a short time for Mr. Rice to be eligible to run for office. Disagreement is not disrespect. The greater good for the city comes from residency requirements. Benefit to the city at large is more important than benefit to one individual. I would also like to dispel two notions that have been mentioned by the Taffs. They say that there would be a problem if council can choose the Charter Review Commission. I would agree, but that's not what the commission report says. It says that council shall by ordinance appoint the commission of 9 qualified electors of the city to be known as the Charter Review Commission. Appointing a commission is not the same as choosing its members. Members of the 2024 Charter Commission were chosen by a process by which each elected official, the mayor and 7 council members, rank ordered their choices from a pool of applicants in a collaborative method. Excuse me. As I have often said, each elected official voted for at least 5 members of the 5 of the 9 members on the commission. A similar process is contemplated for the future. The second notion is the claim that several of the recommendations of the commission are unwise or truly terrible, Mr. Taft's words. The claims that Mr. Taft made are simply his opinions on the recommendations. He's entitled to his opinions, but he states them passionately and loudly as if they are facts. He offered no reasons or evidence for his negative claims. His arguments for that reason are not persuasive to me. It is my experience that Mr. Taft has had a long history of opposing change. He was a member of council at the time of the 2010-2011 financial distress in the city and was the chair of the Finance Committee. He opposed such common sense changes to the operation of the city as contracting out dispatch services. Mayor Bain and the city council that was elected in 2011 made this and other changes that brought the city back to solvency. Contracting dispatch services saved the city more than $500,000 per year and provided better service to our residents. He seems to oppose change, even where there are clear benefits to be had. His passionate speech was not persuasive. There is a misguided notion that the recommendations weaken the mayoral position. One of the commission members shared with us accepted descriptions of weak mayor and strong mayor forms of government from 3 different sources, academic sources. The strong mayor, excuse me. These are a summary of what those 3 sources said. The strong mayor, 1, may appoint and remove department heads. 2, drafts and proposes a budget to the city council. 3, possesses a veto or line item veto power. 4, officially represents the city. 5, exercises oversight over the city's day-to-day operations. 6, enforces city's laws and ordinances. And 7, is not a member of city council. In the strong mayor form of city government, the city council elects its own presiding officer and sets its own agenda. All these powers are found in the recommendations of the Charter Review Commission, thus recommending a strong mayor form of government. I am persuaded by strong arguments that have been thoroughly discussed based on evidence and reason and not emotions or reading minds. I am persuaded that the recommendations of the Charter Review Commission are in the best interest of Pepper Pike for the future. A review in 6 years may allow additional improvements to the charter. I want to make at least one last comment on the recommendation regarding the Planning Commission. The current provision makes the mayor a member of the commission. The chair specifies that he appoints 3 electors of the municipality to the commission and is responsible for hiring the professionals who advise the commission. No matter what the application, this structure concentrates too much power in the hands of a single individual and does not provide the necessary checks and balances. With that said, and being on its 3rd reading, I move to adopt ordinance 2025-01.
I'm offended at your disparagement of some of our commenters.
I didn't disparage anybody.
You particularly called out Rick Taft for his, lack of support of change. I mean, you're calling him out for something that in hindsight was a good decision that the city made because he didn't support it. I mean, that's irrelevant here.
I'm just making the point that he generally opposes change.
I truly think that was unnecessary, Tony.
Okay.
I don't think that's a fair characterization that he opposes change. I think that's, you speak of something that is without fact. Mr. Taft, I believe, was on this council when we adopted the change to dispatch.
No, he wasn't.
He may have left council by the time we got to that vote, but he rejoined. I'm not saying that he was, Tony. I'm saying, but to disparage, I agree with the councilwoman. I just think it's inappropriate to make those sort of remarks in this record. I don't think it's fair to the gentleman who put in many years of service to the city. I just don't think it's right. But you say what you want to say.
I was simply pushing back on his argument.
This entire conversation just is becoming uncivil to me. I think Mr. Gentili is allowed to respond to remarks and correct the record as to statements that were made by the audience. We don't respond in real time, which is appropriate. We don't go back and forth with people, but allowing someone to put out a misstatement, a mistruth, it's bad enough that it's put out there without someone properly assessing the information or listening or reviewing it. And I'm not speaking about anyone specifically, just the general idea of putting out misinformation and letting it lie there. It's much harder to correct it once it's put out there. What does it say? A lie goes around the world before the truth ties its shoes. And attacking Mr. Gentili or any other member of this council, including you, Mayor, for doing something when they're trying to respond to something that was incorrect is unnecessary. I just think we should move forward and discuss the issue at hand.
Are there any other comments regarding the committee report?
I'd like to make a comment. I've waited to make a statement regarding the charter review, the process, and its contents. It's time. There have been misstatements made that I would like to address and also give my thoughts about this important issue for our city. First, I think it's important to review the process of the charter review. In early 2024, Council initiated discussions and legislation regarding this process. Thank you to Mr. Gentili for spearheading this effort. Throughout the charter review process, outreach has been made to the community multiple times by the mayor, by council, and by the commission itself. This occurred through various methods: emails, physical mailings to every household, information and updates via the city newsletter, and this issue has been covered many times by our local news media. This outreach included a call for applicants, updates regarding the process, posting of agendas detailing the topics the commission was planning to discuss, and open meetings that occurred various times of the day and days of the week. Detailed minutes regarding the discussions and the work the commission was engaged in were all available online along with a live red line. If you chose not to participate in the process that we all were invited to participate in, that was your choice. There were ample opportunities for everyone to be involved if they chose to do so, and I would like to thank those that did. There have been assertions that the commission was handpicked by council. That isn't true. It was a collaborative effort that brought this body of individuals comprised of very bright minds together. We were fortunate to have over 30 extremely qualified individuals volunteer to serve our city. We had an excellent candidate pool, and the democratic process of voting for the members was done by both the mayor and council together. No one person at this table voted for 100% of the members selected. This commission of 9 was an amalgamation of all of our votes. Each of them, Dr. Hoffman, Ms. Jarrett, Mr. Vanzana, Ms. Fellows, Mr. Resnick, Ms. Eichhoff, Mr. Bilski, and Mr. Bochnick, which include a doctor, lawyers, business professionals, those with expertise in finance, and individuals who have served our community on other important bodies, brought a unique perspective and skill sets to the table. They did their work with seriousness and were methodical. They used the expertise of our law director to guide their choices, and the chairman is a serving law director in another community. Their recommendations are not novel. They are founded in fact. They thoughtfully evaluated our 1966 charter and looked for opportunities for improvements in the hopes of installing guardrails for the future, as many of our surrounding communities have done and continue to do with periodic charter reviews. I personally took the time to sit in the audience at a few of the meetings to observe the work of this body. I wanted to understand their process and how they arrived at the recommendations they have made. What I saw was a group that was organized, methodical, serious, communicative, and collaborative. This was done in a non-political, non-partisan, and objective manner with the best interests of Pepper Pike in mind. It was impressive. Ultimately, I believe the updates recommended by the Charter Review Commission, if placed on the May ballot by council and then approved by Pepper Pike voters, will be positive changes for Pepper Pike. Again, I will say, let us not forget this process is not novel. Most communities regularly review their charter and institute change to keep up with the times. A periodic evaluation of our guiding document, a checkup to evaluate the health of our government and our city, is necessary and should be done more often. And if the voters agree, a recommendation that the commission has made is an evaluation every 6 years. The recommendation isn't to change the whole charter. There are many sections that remain untouched with the exception of updating nomenclature and required updates to make the charter compliant with state law. And again, this was done with the guidance of our law director. It's important to remember that the mayor will still be the CEO of our city, as a mayor should be. When our charter was written, Pepper Pike was a village. We have changed. Our population has increased, and the needs of our citizens have changed. Most cities have a council president. I've often been asked why we don't have one, And when I say it's according to charter and the mayor runs our meetings, it's met with surprise and disbelief. In the case of a village, the mayor running the council meeting is typical. We're no longer a village. And I believe that having a council president in place and presiding over meetings would be a positive change for Pepper Pike. Last week, a former councilman expressed his sadness regarding the charter review. As a current council member and longtime resident of our city, I will say it took more years than I have been alive to fully evaluate and update this document. I'm saddened that it's been acceptable for us to function under a charter that doesn't even include my gender as a member of council. It's important to remember that opinions should be based on fact and understanding. We've heard some mistruths regarding the process. I'll encourage you to arrive at your own facts. I've also seen the use of social media to spread misinformation to mislead the public. That is wrong. Again, we are all free to judge this document and come to our own conclusions, but please do so using facts. Look at the city website, pepperpike.org. Use the information regarding the Charter Review Commission. Look at the recommendations, read the rationale, and think about how these changes will continue to improve our great city for us and for the future of Pepper Pike. To quote our mayor, change will feel unfamiliar at times and require patience as we seek best answers. Sometimes we will debate and disagree on the way forward, but the debate must be and will be conducted with civility and the respect that is appropriately accorded when people of goodwill come together for a common cause. We will go forward, we will accomplish, and we will succeed. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mayor.
Mr. No?
First of all, I want to express my appreciation to all the people who put in hours and hours of work, intelligent people who devoted their time and energy, and it was a long and tedious project. I support, and I still supported and still support the Charter Review. To update and improve a document that is, 60 plus years old? What I want my colleagues on council to consider tonight is to just take a little bit more time. Throughout this process, as my colleague just mentioned, the commission sent out many emails and several invitations by snail mail to ask any resident to stop into the meetings and hear what was going on and offer suggestions. But as Councilmember Godek said, reviewing a charter is not as sexy as sidewalk. Back when we began all of this, one thing that really made me feel at ease was that we were going to get the word out. We planned to set aside a month for town hall meetings. Residents could not only ask questions, but also offer input into the charter revision. I think it's time to do that. Recently, I've been hearing from residents who are starting to wonder what a charter review even is and what it means. And when I give them an overview, explain it in an elementary way, it's a process intended to enhance communication in city government and fine-tune some of the way the council and the mayor work together. You can literally hear a sigh of understanding. What I am suggesting tonight is, in the interest of better communication between government and residents, is that we schedule town halls before we vote on this. Pepper Pike, as you may know, has a long history of town halls. In 2010, during the financial crisis, we had some dandy town halls. There are people in this room who were there. They were all very well attended. They gave all sides a chance to voice their opinions, their ideas and concerns, and ask questions of council members and the mayor. Our recent town halls about walkways were also very well attended, and we heard from so many residents, and I don't know about you, but I've certainly learned a lot from getting their input. I want every one of the people we represent to have a chance to learn more and offer their suggestions. I spent my life as a communicator, and I've seen what a difference communication makes. We have a lot of time invested in this. Before we take the next step, let's just take a little bit more time. Thank you.
I'd like to support Scott's proposition for a few reasons. Over the past few weeks, because I wasn't so involved in the process of drafting recommendations, it's been a real learning experience for me as well to go through this, to sit through these meetings, to hear from audience, to hear from fellow council people, to hear from the mayor, to hear from our law director. And I was trying to figure out, because on the face of it, I agree, there were ample opportunities for people to participate. And I think the thing that really switched it for me from thinking, well, no, like we're fine to just move forward, people have had time to contribute and ask questions, is that when you hear charter review, at least to me, that is kind of esoteric. It doesn't have such a concrete, this is what the outcome is going to be. Now that the commission has made specific recommendations and we've been talking about them and starting to hear from people in the community, you can tell that people are now more engaged because there are specific things to talk about, not just some like kind of a generic concept in the air. I looked back at the draft of the process that we proposed, Tony proposed initially, this was back in February, and that had the town halls coming between the Charter Commission's recommendations and council's vote. And I do think that that is the appropriate way to handle this. I do agree that taking an extra 6 months isn't really going to change much. I am almost fully in support of the document as presented by the commission, but I have gone back and forth on several of the, I would say, more important aspects of it over the past few weeks as I've been talking to people. And I think that now that this is all sort of filtering out into the community, we really do owe it to people to give them a chance to come to the town halls. And, I was like, okay, worst case scenario, what happens? We have a couple town halls. There's the people in this room in attendance and no more. And they're quick and, everyone gets up, says their piece, we move on. That's sort of like base level. Better than that, which is what I would anticipate, is the people showing up like they did for past issues. I mean, obviously I was here for the sidewalks. I wasn't here for the tax raise. But to Scott's point in terms of, the electorate is engaged. They want to come. They want to ask questions. They want to be heard in a more meaningful way now that there's something to actually talk about. So I really do think that council is underestimating the likelihood of this passing in May if we push it through tonight and don't give people time to make meaningful suggestions, recommendations, ask questions. People are going to come to it looking at it as, we've heard the phrase power grab by council. I don't think that's a fair characterization, but that's going to stick. Council pushed this through before town halls. The optics of it are not good. And so I think I'm in favor of giving people more of a chance to have their say. And at the end of the day, we have town halls, they're well attended, they're not well attended. Maybe we, vote on this exact document as it stands. I don't think we're any worse off for it. And I think we are much better positioned to be successful on election day.
We're all entitled to our opinions, and I think Scott brings up a good point, and so do you. But I also look at the other side, and the commission did not want to do town halls, so that's why they didn't happen. And the commission reached out to the community nearly 24 times for input.
Right, but that to my point of like,
Can
Tell us-
I finish?
right, but
I let you.
Tony
talk
has the floor.
At length.
thanks.
Thanks for breaking my train of thought. The commission made yeoman's efforts to get input from the community. And for those of you who didn't attend any meetings, you didn't see that. But they did. And they had input at every single meeting from the public. Mr. Mr. Leskovic spoke at one of the meetings, at least one of the meetings, maybe more than one. Mr. Naft spoke at some of the meetings. Mr. Rice spoke at the meetings. These people heard the call for input and they came out. We can't, your words, it's not a sexy topic. We can't make people come out and attend. So I think we've done, not we, the commission did, as I said, yeoman's work to try and get input, and we are where we are. And if we shouldn't delay this beyond May. If you wanted to talk about my schedule always contemplated voting on this in May. And I don't want to change that.
I would just like to, oh, Jim.
Go
would you
ahead,
like
go
to-
ahead, Melanie.
I'd just like to follow up. I mean, I just want to make note that in addition to snail mail, there were numerous electronic means of outreach, both by email, on the website. There were numerous meetings on weekdays, on weekends, in the morning, in the evening. So there was a lot of availability for people to, including council members, to engage with the Charter Review Commission. In addition, the minutes of every single meeting, which were highly detailed, were made available to all of us. So if people had a problem with how the commission was doing their work or concerns with any piece of it, including communication, there was ample time to do that during that entire long process. And I think we encouraged people, and Tony, Mr. Gentili encouraged people during these meetings to be engaged, that we reported out on it.
You guys
Saying-
are mischaracterizing what I said.
No, if
You
I
are.
can continue, if I can continue, you said because I wasn't involved in drafting these. Well, the commission was involved in drafting
Right.
these. None of us were involved in drafting these, and that was very much supposed to be the intent, that the Charter Review Commission would work on their own. The liaisons were there to assist them in giving them information, providing, setting up scheduling and meetings, but we did not lead, we did not draft this for them. Neither did we direct them or not direct them to have any kind of community meetings. They made the decisions they made. And it seems disingenuous to say previously, let the Charter Review Commission do their own thing. Council shouldn't be involved, even though, by the way, in the document talking about charter reviews that we keep referencing, it talks about the Charter Review reaching out, getting testimony, getting written questions from the council and the employees of the city and the mayor. It seems disingenuous to say, well, the Charter Review now didn't do it right. We're going to micromanage how the Charter Review did it and say they did it wrong. The Charter Review met. They put an extraordinary amount of time, and I'm sorry that you didn't witness it, an extraordinary thought and integrity into this document. And I am of the belief that we should be respectful to these people, excuse me, these people who put so much thought, so much time, so much research, and gave us these recommendations. Now we want to pick apart, supposedly, how they did it. And I think it's really, really wrong. To say that people weren't engaged, I mean, you cannot, I agree, force people to be engaged. And I don't know if it's not sexy. I mean, we will have community meetings. There will be ample time to ask questions, to get information, which has already been out there, but there'll be much more time for that. And in addition, it bothers me for any of us to say that they believe that this is a good document and are opposed to the idea that this is a power grab by council and not actively contradict, actively say why and how they know that to be true. I think that it's unfair to all these people who put in hours and hours of time. And now I just can't comprehend, except something that is going on beyond my view of why at this 11th hour, certain individuals are questioning the work of these people.
I think you're mischaracterizing what I said. I'm not questioning their work at all. I said I support this document. I'd happily vote for it. I just think that we need to give the community more time to respond to the specifics of it versus the more general charter review idea.
So-
I am not disparaging. I part of the reason I wasn't involved in the process is because I am happy to delegate to those people. I trust them implicitly. There's no disparaging going on.
But you're questioning their process. It's like in saying that they didn't hold the town halls, you're questioning the process and the product that they came out with. And if that was something that anybody felt very strongly about, they should have spoken up
I was
during this
under-
before their final report went out.
I was
And we were
under-
updated all along with that. So I think it is, when you say 11th hour, this is an 11th hour want on there. And ultimately, the community will decide whether or not this charter document is worthy of their support or not. And they will do that at the ballot box. They're going to have time to find out the details about it, decide whether or not they believe that the Charter Review Commission's recommendations are favorable or not, and then cast their vote and go from there. So I think that I think we move forward with the process.
And I also just one last thing I wanted to say. If one does not believe, and I'm not talking about you, Jackie, or anybody else, if one does not believe that this is a power grab by council, and if one believes this is a good, well-worked, well-researched document, then there should be no straddling of the fence. There should be no, I don't want to upset people who believe that. If you believe it, say it. And I believe it. I believe this is a good document. I believe the Charter Review Commission did this with integrity, hard work, and did a great job. I believe it was, excuse me, their process. And I certainly do not believe that in any way, shape, or form this is a maneuver or manipulation or some kind of conspiracy or power grab by council. I think that's an outrageous statement. And I think that if you can't say that to every single person who implies that or states that, then you're not really standing by what you believe in. And I think that at certain points in your life, you just have to do that. You have to say, that's not correct. And if you don't like what I said because I said it, or if you don't like me because you somehow have determined that something else is at play, then that's okay. And fence straddling is not acceptable.
I really worry that all this hard work is going to be for naught if we push forward to May. That honestly, that's my base level concern. I think this is a good document that should be adopted, and I worry if we put it on the May election without taking the time to really invite the community in, it's not going to succeed.
Jackie, you can't say we haven't
No,
invited
and
the
this is where I'm saying,
can I make a s-
no, because you made this point already.
All right, I'm going to excuse it.
Yeah.
Ms. Godick deserves to finish her comments before she's interrupted.
I didn't interrupt
Councilman.
her. She
And I
finished
did
her
not
comment and I
interrupt
was
Godick,
responding
please-
to
Please
it.
I did
finish.
not interrupt her. That's unfair.
My point
Mr.
is that,
Mayor,
Tony, you're out of order. Ms. Godick, please
just
conclude.
real quick, Tony, my point is that I 100% agree. There were a million opportunities for people to give input. I have like no qualms with that whatsoever. I'm saying that when you get something in your email or the mail that says, please tell us what you think should happen with the charter review, that is somewhat esoteric and hard to wrap your head around. When you start finding out these are the specific provisions recommended, then it makes it more clear, more concrete, where you're like, I actually have an opinion about that. I have no opinion about what the charter should say because I'm not immersed in the document. I have an opinion as to whether X, Y, or Z should occur. That's like the distinction I'm making. So we gave people tons of time and opportunity to talk prior to the specific recommendations. And now that it's out there, I think they should have the same opportunity to respond to that.
may I speak now?
Yep, please.
All through the process, the Charter Review Commission had a running red line
Mhm.
showing all of the changes that they were recommending making. So the folks who were asked nearly 24 times to have input, if they were interested, could go to the website, they could read the minutes, or they could read the red line, and they would see the changes that were being recommended. So this isn't really the first time they're seeing it when they finish their report.
I totally agree with that, but that you're sort of thinking almost like in a perfect world where people take the time to do their research into something that may not immediately be apparently interesting, versus now that the chatter is out in the community and people are sort of forced to hear like, oh, this is going on. Like, what's that all about? And they get the little snippets in a more, just like sort of natural and chatting with the neighbor type of way. Like there's a difference between seeking out a red line document on the city website and hearing something from your neighbor that's going on at council. So yeah, I mean, obviously anyone could have done that, but now people are actually hearing
Well, they're
what's in the
hearing,
document.
they're hearing misinformation primarily, as I think you would agree, because they're
Yeah,
saying things about.
I agree. There's a
And
lot
so,
of,
and so
yeah.
that's really disheartening to me, that,
yeah.
that misinformation that's meant to inflame, intended and put out in a way that's intended and meant to inflame falsehoods, misinformation, mischaracterizations, obfuscation, half-truths. I mean, they all fall in one category in my book. And when those are being put out to inflame people and now they're engaged, it's because they've been told something that is sinister, bad, harmful, corrupt, some kind of conspiracy, none of which are true. And yeah, it was kind of boring because if people read it, especially the way that it would be actually easier to study and learn it in chunks as it came out, in sections as they addressed it, they would, it might have been boring because it wasn't any of those things. It wasn't sinister or a maneuver or manipulation or any of these false ideas that are being put out there. So I don't understand why that should drive this process. I'm not clear on why something like that should get advantage.
I'm not talking, Melanie, just about like sort of misinformation. I'm talking about people just, like I'm sure as you guys have people like, what's going on with this charter thing? Like, they just are all of a sudden becoming aware of it. They want the details. They want to talk about it. And not
I've had the same experience.
Yeah, and not in a sinister way at all. They just want information. So, and again, the baseline of this is I really worry about pushing this through in May, that we're back to square one.
And in fact-
That is my fundamental concern.
And in fact, I think these are all arguments in having the town halls. If some misinformation is starting to get out, this screams for the town halls.
I
And
think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
we promised those town halls, at least in my mind, we promised those as part of the process. I don't think Mr. Gentili said that the Charter Commission didn't want town halls.
They didn't.
I think we can make the decision to have town halls.
But
I think we
but you
still
said
can
you didn't
have-
want council to be involved in the commission. That was your initiative from
You're characterizing it so simply, and I did not characterize it that way.
you from the document that you had
The
us all
National
read,
Civic League recommendation.
National Civic League, you said that council and no elected officials should be on the commission. And that's the way it happened. So that left the commission able to run their meetings and choose how they would operate. And that's how they chose to operate.
I don't disagree with any of that.
Okay.
I'm listening to what has happened. My experience has been very similar to what has happened to Councilmember Godek. That is, I'm hearing from people who are just now learning about this and they want to know more. We planned on having town halls so people could ask their questions. It is the ultimate show and promise of transparency for our constituents, the people who elect us, to have a town hall, to have several town halls. We actually set aside in that schedule, and I'm sure you can look back at your document, we set aside a whole month for town halls. We're now saying, and that was before council voted on it. That gives us the opportunity to get input from our residents. That gives the residents a chance to say whatever they have to say. It's just more communication. I don't understand how more communication can be a bad thing. I've made my living doing this. More communication in a relationship, whatever you want to look at it, it always produces better results. It always does.
I think we're discussing the timing though. We still have over a month to have town halls, and I expect that we would have town halls.
But you want to vote on this tonight, don't you?
Right.
Well, do you understand the difference in voting on this prior to the town halls versus the after?
I actually don't.
Okay,
But I want to make the point is that we can't have the vote in May, which was our original target, which was the target, if we don't pass this tonight.
I understand that, and which is, if I communicated well, I think we should take a little bit more time.
So one thing
can
I just want,
Go ahead,
just
Helen.
one quick thing is just that the thought of having town halls to give information so people can understand, I think we're all in support of. I don't think that is remotely controversial. I think we should have several of them. I think one should be on a weekend when people who can't attend during the week
Agree.
would be. I do think that having town, I really believe in honoring the work of the Charter Review Commission and having town halls where a handful of interested people who, I won't go further about what, why or what, try and maneuver what we stayed hands off on the Charter Review Commission seems to not honor that process. I mean, we want a handful of people who now are interested after, for some reason, not being interested prior, at the 11th hour, to meddle with the work of this group of people who studied this document, as opposed to trying to communicate one way or the other and vote. I mean, we keep hearing about last year about how a vote is the ultimate survey. I just don't understand why we can't put out the document that the Charter Review Commission worked so hard and so diligently on and put a lot of time and effort into, not sort of the shooting from the hip. I read it while I was eating my dinner and here's my opinion. They put a tremendous amount of time, collaborative time, talked back and forth. And why we can't put that out there, answer questions, and let people make a determination. I also heard from a lot of people. I heard from various people, sometimes friends, sometimes other people who I didn't know. People were aware of the Charter Review Commission. They were aware, and I got a lot of chuckles, that the charter had been written before we were born. It was actually also written before I was born. Okay, so and as far as communication, I am a big, true believer in communication, but I think we all know that you can also platform misinformation, and there's too much of platforming misinformation. It's hard. It's hard work to not allow that to happen. And I am troubled and disappointed when I see that, but we see it a lot these days. The internet is a great venue for platforming misinformation. And people enjoy that. It's fun for them. It, has to do with a lot of probably issues having to do with grievance. But I just don't believe we should be platforming misinformation. I think we should be making sure that we give people facts and a lot of information, and then they can make a determination, hopefully, using their reasoning, using their hard work, and the same kind of effort, hopefully, that the Charter Review Commission put in. And that's my opinion.
And what I'm hearing is that I haven't heard anybody express great concerns about the recommendations that the Charter Review Commission has made. I've heard different pieces from almost everybody sitting at this table of, I like where, I'm in favor of the recommendations that they made. I do think that we should have town halls, and I think that the town halls should be informational about the document that they are going to be voting on. I think that I do agree that it demeans the work of the commission to go in and now ask for input and change that. That's what they were charged with. They were charged with coming up with recommendations and bringing them back to us. And I think that the process should be, we go ahead, if we are in favor of the document, we move forward with that. We schedule the town halls, as many as we feel that the community would need to be able to understand what it is, and then the vote will happen, hopefully in May. So,
Scott, can I go?
Sure, go ahead.
Scott, does your suggestion necessarily involve foregoing the May date for the vote? Or is it possible that we could have a town hall and still get it in on time? Or how are you thinking about that?
Here's my thinking. I think it's important, first of all, to have the town halls, and to have the town halls, if I didn't explain this well, I apologize, before we vote on it, because that means if we get information from the residents that seems to point to something we might insert, maybe make a minor change, it tells our residents that we didn't go into this without their input, without making every extra effort, going the extra mile to hear what they had to say. And I think that's important. It's important to me that we have this. In the original schedule that we had said that we would have the town halls before we voted on it in council.
The original schedule was before the veto. So that pushed things back.
There were other delays that occurred, mainly the veto.
So Scott, but sticking to the original schedule and having town halls in the interim space we have left, that's not an option in your mind?
Well, tell me what that schedule would be.
Well, we have to have it to the commission by February 5th, right? I think is the date we heard. Is that
To the Board of Elections.
to the Board of Election? Yeah. And so I'm just asking, when you were formulating your view on this, you were thinking that necessarily involved putting off the vote to November.
Well, what I did was, and I appreciate the question, I looked at how we originally envisioned this. And I think it takes some time to get the word out to people. I think we have to give people several choices. And I guess the question that I've been asking myself is, what do we gain by sticking to this schedule? And what do we lose if we don't stick to the schedule? I have heard from more than one resident who, when you kind of go through all of this, they're fascinated by it. They love talking about it. But they all, I could say to a person, everyone says, well, what's the rush on all this? It's been this way for, what, how many years has the government been this way? I mean, at least 60 under this charter. And it just strikes me that I get a sense that some people want to make sure that we make that deadline.
Scott, we purposely, one last thing. We purposely wanted to avoid the election when there were going to be council members up for election. And if we do it in November, there will be council members who are up for election at the same time. And that was one of the goals, was to have it outside of the election. And the Charter Review Commission's recommendation is to start the process so that those votes would always be in May. They would not be coincidental with council member openings being voted for.
Scott, like Jackie has spoken about concerns about getting this passed, which is fair. Would you agree that you support the substantive changes in the charter? I think that's what I heard you say.
I do support the substance and the changes, yes.
And it's the process that you're concerned with, as opposed to the outcomes that are in the document itself.
It is the signal that it sends to some, it's the signal that it sends to some people
Got it.
that we didn't have our town halls before we voted on this.
Yeah.
I do have that is not, I'm not in favor of that. And I hope I explained why, because we do, obviously the residents can learn a lot in the town halls, but we also want to learn from the residents. And I will bring up the charter, or the National Civic League document again. It says that these town halls are a great forum for learning what the residents are thinking. And if you do have to make alterations in it, and if you want to get this thing passed, you have, according to the experience of many communities who have done this, you have a better chance of it passing if you do it in this order. and you listen to people, and if they have changes to make, then you can incorporate those changes. I'm concerned that if we vote on this now and then have town halls, those town halls are simply informational. We're not gathering information from the residents. We're just explaining what it is.
I guess what troubles me is this implies putting aside the work of the Charter Review Commission. This,
No.
in any
No.
subsequent.
I
Well,
disagree with that.
then people, it is otherwise saying that the people come and just get information or make remarks, and we don't put aside the work of the Charter Review Commission. If we don't accept their recommendation, which the process was intentionally very hands-off, it was letting them control the process, letting them choose their officers, choose their meeting times, choose their process, and go and every piece of it. It was very interesting. I wouldn't have thought of doing things the way they did. I was very impressed by much of it, but I wouldn't have come to those conclusions on my own to make those decisions. So it just feels like it's the only possible outcome of either of gathering feedback and using that feedback at this point, when there has been so many opportunities, ample opportunities. I mean, dozens upon dozens of opportunities for the community to give feedback in various ways, probably more than that. I mean, more than that. And it seems as if we would then be setting aside substantive work of the Charter Review Commission based on the views of a handful of people who came to meetings, or even if it was, a few more than that. And they really put this effort in. It seems contrary to the document that we keep referencing. It seems contrary to the intent of being hands-off of the Charter Review Commission and letting them do their work and letting them make their recommendations. And we are now charged with trying to decide if we should accept those recommendations. So I don't quite understand how that feedback telling us that we should not accept most of those recommendations is reflective of that process.
I don't intend that process at all. My intent of having the town halls is to hear what people have to say. I bet you hear a lot of people, if it's anything what the residents say to me, they will like a lot of it. But we are giving our residents a chance to talk to us about this process. Yes, we did work very hard to get a very good Charter Review Commission in place. I thought I said that right at the beginning of what my comments were. They did a great job. They put in a ton of hours. They did ask people for their input, but I must say, I agree with Councilmember Godek, and that is a lot of the process was done, much of it, there's some in the holiday period. It probably wasn't on people's, at the last part of it during the run up.
They
It started in July.
they didn't have they only had one meeting after Christmas.
What about from Thanksgiving to Christmas?
Well, yeah, I guess that's part of the holiday season, I guess, but,
Well, let's put that aside.
well, you brought it up.
You're right, I did. Put that aside, though. I just don't think it was on people's minds. I really don't. And I think now that it's beginning to become a little bit clearer in their minds, especially when people are now writing about it on social media, and it's now gained some attention, and they're now starting to kind of get what has happened. Now I think they're becoming interested. And this is one of the reasons I feel that in your original plan, which I thought was good, by the way, I compliment you on a lot of the work you did. I looked at that list of things that you wanted to do. And the thing, as I mentioned in my original comments, the thing that I was really happy about was that we were going to go through this process. And we did have results, high quality results that I thought we would have. And then we were going to let people have a whole month to absorb it. And when the word finally got out about kind of what the essence of it was. And would at least give residents a chance to say, hey, maybe you should tweak this, or, this, you might want to rethink this. I don't know about any of you, but I don't have a problem if we hear something from the residents that makes a lot of sense. I don't have a problem with being able to incorporate that in what we finally approve.
Well, I want to just make one point, Scott. This has been on social media from the get-go. It's been on social media from maybe even before the first July meeting.
Before, I think it's been on social media before, as soon as council started discussing a charter review.
Right.
Commission.
So it's not new to social media. If we still have we have more than a month for town hall meetings. When I set that month of November, or whatever it was, up for town hall meetings, I meant that we would have 2 or 3 meetings during that month, not a whole month of meetings.
No,
Two, maybe 3. And I think we had 3 for sidewalks, and 2 were well attended. And as I recall, one of them wasn't very well attended. So anyway, that was the thought.
can I,
If we have,
questions about the process?
pardon?
I wanted to ask you a question about
Sure.
your process. In your process, you had us doing the town halls before we took the vote. Can you explain what the reasoning behind that was?
The reasoning was to get input, but I didn't know the amount of input that would be solicited by the commission ahead of time. So I've learned something new, and I've changed my opinion as to whether they're necessary to gather input. I think we've done that. If we have the town halls in, let's just say March, so we can just say the month of March. If we learn something there that really troubles us, we can pull it off the ballot. And if we just hear things that are minor tweaks that may or may not improve it, we just let it go. But if we hear something really, really dramatic that says, well, you guys really messed up, we pull it. And I don't think that's going to happen, but we aren't really losing anything by having the town halls and explaining the commission's report in March, and then seeing where that goes.
Let me clarify. Steve, what's the law on that? We can pull this until when?
Well, you certainly could pull it up until 60 days before the election, because that's the deadline for filing under the state constitution. But I think you have authority to pull it at any time. If you get a vote of 5 members to pull it, they would just not count the votes. People would still vote on it, but it wouldn't be of legal effect.
And to pull it and not have it on the ballot, what would be the timing for that?
I think it's got to be before they print the ballots.
And what's the timing on that? Roughly?
75 days before the election, because they've got to get those out to oversee voters.
Sure.
That
So that would be May,
the third week in February.
I think that
third week in February?
Pulling it is a worst case scenario. I don't envision
Yeah.
that happening.
the threshold then for change is really high, right? Like if you want to pull it off the ballot, it has to be, like you said, something like pretty dramatic that we're all like, whoa, this is
Yeah.
like problematic.
What
And I
did they
think what
miss?
Scott's talking about is more incremental stuff. Like, is it going to be 5 members or 6 members or 7 members who have to vote in favor of removal? Things like around the margins that you're not going to pull it off the ballot to make a change like that. But if there's some big problem with like the planning commission provision that we're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, we can't have that in there, you would want to. Do you see what I'm saying? Whereas
I guess
I agree. And I think
This
if
is
it's,
really
if it's a tweak like 6 or 7 or
Yeah.
5 or whatever, we can just decide to accept the commission's report. What would somebody say? What could somebody say that would say that?
like I actually think this is a perfect example. I've gotten a lot of negative feedback about the removal provision for the mayor, and people can't wrap their heads around it. And to be honest, that's one that I can kind of take it or leave it. And I correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously you guys know more than I do, but I got the impression reading the minutes that was not I would say if you were like ranking where the commission felt more strongly to less strongly, that would have been like towards the bottom of like, we've got to have this in there. And that would be something that I think a town hall would be useful prior to a vote, because if you had, you know, a bunch of people coming up saying, you know, this, that, and the other, and also, you know, we do not think that council should be able to remove the mayor. And you hear that in some sort of critical mass, then you're like, you know, you take that into account. And I'm using that as an example
Yeah.
because it's something that I've actually gotten pushback on.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that's kind of the thing I'm thinking about.
Okay, well, I guess I'd go back to say that removal was not one of the questions that I asked. And what I did with the commission was send them a series of questions. I sent them some at the outset. Matter of fact, I think I shared sample questions with all of you before we even launched into this position. And I just asked questions. I never made recommendations that I can recall. And I don't think I ever asked about that one. However, they brought it into the picture because all of the surrounding communities have that, the ability to remove a mayor, remove a council person. And I think they struggle to have an even-handed way of doing that. It needs to be serious to remove a council member. It needs to be really serious to remove a mayor. All that aside, I don't think that either of those provisions are ever going to be used.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think they're ever going to be used. So we're sawing the sawdust about something that is probably moot. If it has to be used, if a mayor is, I don't know, colluding with the police chief to fix tickets or something, I don't know, make something silly up, that would warrant removing him,
Yeah.
then 5 or 6, it doesn't really matter. It would have to be something so egregious. That's what I said when I said to use the word renegade. That's what I meant, a renegade, some nutcase that somehow got to be mayor, or some guy that was a great person got to be mayor and then turned into a nutcase. It's probably not going to happen. So I think we're really, I know that's just an example, but I just don't think that would ever be used. But it's a guardrail there for the worst case scenario happening of an elected official who is not doing their job or doing their job poorly or taking advantage of the city in some way.
And how I look at this is we had a 1966 charter. So basically take a 1966 car that doesn't have seatbelts, that doesn't have airbags, that doesn't have any of those safety features in it. What the commission is doing is installing those safety measures for the future. That's what those removal processes are. It's not because anybody in their wildest imagination believes that we're going to need to use it. But you know what? If you're in a car accident and your airbag goes off, you're sure glad that it's there.
And I think that's really, if you had sat in on the commission meetings, you would see that was their process. They basically looked almost every case, I believe, at other charters. And I think they came to the meetings prepared, having reviewed a lot of other charters. And they kind of pinpointed provisions that we were missing and then discussed why those provisions were missing. Kind of an update, you know, and you get that in policy, you get that in a lot of ways. And some of those provisions, as we found out, were things that were unconstitutional. I mean, we had several provisions that shouldn't have been there and just were never removed. And maybe they were unenforceable, but it was an uneasy feeling that they were still sitting out there. So their work was really, I know I didn't suggest, for example, that provision. It wasn't even something that would have been on my radar. And in addition, that provision, it's interesting to me that people focus, if we're going to bring it up, I find it to be kind of esoteric and really limited. I can't imagine it being applied. People focus on the very first reason or very first way a person would be removed, either a mayor or a council person. They don't focus on that they were adjudicated for, as a criminal in a certain, or, mentally incompetent. Those things that I think aren't controversial. I mean, those were things that I think would be you would have substantive information, and I think that would be pretty universally acceptable. So I just think that it's interesting because these aren't things that originated from council. This wasn't the work of council creating these provisions or this document. It was the work of the Charter Review Commission, and anybody could go through all the documentation, including everything that came during the process, and see that this was something that came from a comparative review of charters. That's how I would reference it. A comparative review of charters found our charter lacking in these typical standard key guardrails and provisions. And that's how something like those provisions were added by the Charter Review Commission. And that's why there wasn't so much priority by them, I think, because they seemed like such baseline guardrails that would be almost in if you had gone and purchased the form charter from some sort of legal company that put out documents, they would have those provisions, just like you could get maybe a form contract. Extra over-the-top things, language that lawyers insert because just in case of some unusual circumstance.
I'm going to interrupt for a second here. There's been a lot of discussion. I think Scott has expressed his views. I think Ms. Godick has expressed her views. I think the rest of the council have expressed their views. Is there more conversation you wish to have? You have a motion on the floor.
Yes.
Does it require a second, or do you want to defer voting the way that Ms. Godick and Mr. Newell have suggested? I just want to get some direction here and move along.
Tonight, there's a substantive provision in the charter. We need to have an effective date in the charter, and the commission left that blank, essentially. I think that's in page 24, effective date of this charter. It's just redlined out, and there's a comment about it. Steve, we need to have an effective date, correct?
Well, the ordinance provides for an effective date. I mean, the draft of the ordinance that you got had January 1st as the effective date of the
Okay.
charter. The effective date of the charter does not have to be in the charter.
In the charter itself.
The ordinance putting it on the ballot
Okay.
can set that term.
So I just want to point that out to council, that's the way Steve drafted the ordinance. That was a suggestion, and whether we're comfortable sticking with that, it would be, if it passed in May, would be 8 months, 7 months after it passed, or whether there's some notion that we'd want to do it sooner than that, if it passed. Any?
We don't usually have things sit that long. I don't know, that's not our usual practice. We always do things as an emergency. I'm not saying that we would do that, but I don't know. That's a really interesting question because we don't ever have things hanging out there.
It's just, I just want to make sure we make an intentional decision on that.
No,
And-
it's a good point, and I remember it came up.
And I don't have a strong feeling. It is a long time to hang out. On the other hand, there are some ordinances and processes we need to pass and get in place. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, it will take some time. It's a fair question.
3 months, like summer.
I-
I don't know. Steve, do you have a sense of how long it would take to get?
Well, the reason I did that is because you have an organizational meeting in January.
Yeah.
It seems like after a municipal election, you'd have new officers in place to make the decisions that need to be made under the new provisions of the charter.
It just seems like such a long time, right? We're always doing things, declaring an emergency and because we want it to be in effect. I'm really torn.
I didn't think about this very much, but since we're opening up the discussion, I'll just throw another date out there and maybe we could choose from the two, but would September 1st be a date that we could, I don't know, choose one or the other? I don't have a strong view on it either.
That's 4 months, about 4 months after passing.
Maybe October 1st, the beginning of the third quarter, instead of September 1st, but I'm just trying to get us off a dead center on this, because if nobody has a strong opinion, then
No,
maybe we should just leave it at January 1st. I don't know.
I mean,
I think January's probably fine. I don't know. I think January is probably fine.
It just seems like such a long time from May. That's the only thing that doesn't sit well.
Could argue
Yeah.
for a November vote then.
Yeah, but I think that then we're sitting on the work of the Charter Review Commission. They really worked hard to get this done for us.
I
The
think,
amount of time and the way they scheduled these meetings, the work they put in seems really,
think
again,
it's,
it feels very disrespectful to me.
I think it's a bigger thing to give up our goal of not having this coincident with the council election.
Yeah, what's the rationale behind that?
The rationale is that people will have to run on that issue. And I don't think that
Well,
they should.
I don't know. I don't know because it's going to be on the ballot. I mean, when I was knocking on doors last fall, it was actually great that sidewalks were on the ballot because people were like, oh, you want sidewalks? And I could talk to people who I knew were against sidewalks. And I said, it doesn't matter what I think about sidewalks because it's on the ballot. So you vote however you want for that. And let's talk about what my qualifications are. So I actually found it really liberating. It didn't like automatically disqualify me in the eyes of part of the electorate.
Well, using your own words to argue against you, sidewalks were sexy.
That's true.
And,
Right.
and this isn't going to be. So
Yeah.
we wanted to avoid having people have that, conflict to have to run on something like that. And
Why is that a conflict?
I don't
understand.
see it being a
I can
conflict
say
at
that
all.
I'm going to be up for reelection, and I have no problem at all with that. None.
I just think it's really a bizarre situation to have the Charter Review Commission finish their work in December and then almost a complete year later, put it on the ballot. I just think that's odd. And the momentum they had and all the work and the information, I know people think that information wasn't put out, but I have people who have said to me that they are aware of the work. Maybe I don't know how much they went into the details of it, but plenty of people said to me that they were aware that there was a charter review going on. And it seems strange to wait an entire 11 months to put something on the ballot that they worked on, and they were under a crunch. They were meeting, sometimes twice in a week. And now we're going to
Even
say,
3
oh,
times.
by the way, Charter Review Commission, you could have had the, months and months and months to do that. It just seems really wrong. It just seems terrible to me to do that to these people who were doing such a civic, giving us such a duty to this community and devoting themselves.
Let's just to call that question though, October 1st, just to put a date in there so we have it, if that's,
Any of
Or
those dates are
September,
fine
I
with me.
think
I don't
September
really,
1st is.
I don't really have a,
Steve, just process-wise to change that, what do we need to do if we want to pick
Just
another?
a motion to amend the ordinance.
Okay.
I mean, take a motion to adopt and then a motion to amend. Vote on the motion to amend and then vote on the motion to adopt.
Men first, right, okay.
so do I need to amend or make
No,
another
you need a
motion?
second to your motion to adopt.
Pardon?
You need a
Well-
second to a motion to.
Well, can we do the amendment first though?
Usually, it's.
Let's do the.
The proper order is usually a motion to adopt because the ordinance is not in front of you technically until there's a motion to adopt and a second. Then you do a motion to amend.
Oh, before we
A
vote.
second,
Ah,
and then vote on the motion to amend, and then vote on the motion. to
Okay.
adopt.
There was one other point I wanted to raise substantively, if you could take a look at page 24 of the red line. And this is the Charter Review Commission. And then I'd ask you to go back to page 16, just to.
I'm sorry, I don't have it 24.
Page 24
24 for the commission report?
of the commission report.
or, you mean?
Oh, I just have the charter in front of me. Hang on a second.
11A.
Yeah, it's section 11A.
Yeah, okay.
And then just compare that, and I'll tell you why in a second, to the section V5 on page 16 of the report. In that section in V5, we have that the planning commission appointed by the mayor and the council through an application process determined by ordinance. So that was the language that paralleled how the Charter Review Commission was chosen.
Mhm.
And I think this is an oversight by the commission that they didn't use the exact same language when the next Charter Review Commission in 6 years is chosen. So if you go to section 11A,
Mhm.
and I'll just read what I would like to change there, is basically to make it consistent with the election method by which the last Charter Review Committee was chosen. So the second line begins the word October.
Mhm.
And I would strike the words shall by ordinance and insert the council and the mayor shall, through an application process determined by ordinance, comma, appoint a commission. The point is I thought the commission appointing process worked really well. It got a great commission. Everyone got to vote on that, who's an elected official, and we should do the same thing next time. And that's just to incorporate that same notion, the same place. And I think,
I would use the word choose the commission, choose the members of the commission.
choose rather than appoint.
I think council has to appoint it by ordinance. And
I
then
think
put the
that's why
names in
that
it.
language is there, but maybe it's confusing. Is that what we're saying?
I
Because
think if we say choose by that method, but then I think council still has to appoint by
so
ordinance.
yeah, that's
Because
why I
we
think they
passed an
use that
ordinance
language.
With the
Ah,
names in it
appointed.
after the choices were made.
I think what Jim's saying was contemplated, but maybe they just contemplated we had our process. And I agree with you, Tony, that was the language of how council would do
Well,
the work, would vote.
Oh, I see. Well, that's
But
correct.
maybe it needs a clarification. I don't know.
in the
I
plan-
don't like to mess with their.
In the planning commission language, it says to be appointed by the mayor and council through an application process determined by ordinance. So we could just mirror that exact language, I guess.
I'm good with that.
Okay, let me see how to work that. I don't know if the English works quite the same way. So if 11A said, in the month of October, the council and the mayor shall, through an application process determined by ordinance, appoint, right? That's the right word. Appoint a commission of 9 electors.
I'll leave that one to Mr. Byron.
Yeah, I get what he's saying. We can do that.
That's okay.
I'll simply comment that I feel it has the same flaw as the original process, and that I believe that the mayor of the city should have an independent appointment authority of members of the commission. I know council apparently does not agree with that, but that is what I would recommend, like every other city that I know of, where the mayor is an independent appointment to a charter review commission.
Just want to note that this is the work of the Charter Review Commission and not the words of council or the work of council.
I just think the commission, had they noticed that, they would have added that in there because that's the process by which they were appointed. And I think it was widely believed that was a good process. And I would hope that the ordinance that the council needs to prepare would mirror that type of a process. So those are the two things that just picking a date, and then I think that change to 11A just makes that consistent with how it was previously appointed.
Well, you have a motion to adopt the ordinance, but there's no second.
So, okay. Help us with the process again one more time, Steve.
So you need a second to the motion,
Okay.
and then make your motion to amend the ordinance to include the different effective date and the change to 11A.
Tony's motion needs a second.
Yes.
I will second.
Okay. Now, a motion to amend
Okay.
would be to change the date, the effective date, and what date do you want to put in there?
October 1st?
And the change to Article 11A
Eliminate-
as we discussed, to make the language consistent with
Yeah,
5.5.
The English doesn't work exactly because the sentence is structured differently, but it would move the words shall by ordinance and insert after the word council, and the mayor shall, comma, through an application process determined by ordinance, comma,
Yep.
and then back to the text, appoint a commission. So I'll make a motion to amend for those two items.
So you need a second to that.
Second.
Further discussion on the motion to amend? Sure.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion to amend.
Everybody wants to take your job.
You know, everyone wants my job already. You know, can we wait a few months?
Again, I wouldn't mind a review of what we're voting on now.
Jim's amendment.
I know, but if you could state what your amendment is and how it affects this vote.
I understand. I can do the first part. I'm not clear what.
The first part's fine. I just want to know what are we voting on here?
You're voting to change the effective date of the ordinance. It's in section 3 of the ordinance, October 1, 2025.
Mhm.
And you're voting to amend section 11A, which deals with the future appointment of the Charter Review Commission, to track the process and comparable language, although it doesn't track word for word, to how the Charter Review Commission was appointed this time and how the Planning and Zoning Commission members will be appointed going forward.
Not the commission members.
Planning Commission members
Charter Review Commission.
Charter review.
and Planning Commission.
No.
we're-
Planning Commission's already in there as
Yeah, but
stated.
what I'm saying is that the language of the Planning Commission, that's what you were referencing.
Yes, exactly.
Is this, the language, if you look at Article 5, Section 5, there's a process in there by which
And it includes the mayor and council and an ordinance to delineate the process by which that occurs, which I'm taking the Charter Review Commission was referring to the process by which the last Charter Review Commission was appointed, in which it was all 8 elected officials voting on the composition of that. And I'm just making that change so that the next Charter Review Commission in 6 years would have a process to do that, including the mayor and the council. The mayor is not included in that, and I think that's an oversight, so.
Your amendment only references the procedure you're suggesting for the appointment or the creation of the Charter Review Commission in 11A.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Essentially, you're just detailing out.
Yeah, including the mayor in that process, which it wasn't, which I think was an oversight by the council.
Yeah, I think it was, I'm almost positive that was the intent.
Yeah.
So,
And then having an ordinance, having council pass an ordinance to lay out that process, so it's a defined process and through applications and vetting and so forth.
While we're making suggestions for changes, could we look at section 4-8 removal? I know in other city charters, it says, 3/4 of the members need to vote for it, but
Where are you for?
4-8 removal.
Could you give us a page, Kathy?
I'm sorry, page 13.
Thank you. It just makes it.
At the
easier
bottom.
to look at.
Mhm.
I know most other city charters say 3/4 of the members, so it'd be 5 members of council. But since it's such a important thing, can we increase that number?
2.
Maybe to 6? Or,
I don't think that's unreasonable. I think,
Yeah.
I think a unanimous is too much, but 6 is, again, I don't think this is going to be used, but 6 is okay. In my book, 6 is
I mean, I
okay.
don't love messing with their work because I
Right.
know how hard they worked. However, I actually also agree that I just find this, I think this is just language that's inserted in there for some kind of extreme situation that I kind of agree that I can't imagine it coming up. I really, really can't imagine it coming up, especially the first provision, the later provisions, which are, to me, not controversial. guess, in the most rare occasion could come up. But, so
Let me-
I wouldn't, if that makes it, I'm not gonna, I want to be respectful about.
I think, I think it's a good, I think that's a good change. So I will further amend my motion to amend, to add to it, article, per Kathy's suggestion, add to it Article 4.8, changing the text to say at least 6 members of council. So incorporate that would be the date, the appointment method for the next Charter Review Commission, and then the vote required for removal. Steve, just help us with the process.
Yep, yeah, that your motion is amended, and whoever seconded the motion should agree to the second. And so that's, you've got 3 changes that are being made, 1 to the effective date of the ordinance, 1 to the method of appointment, and 1 for increasing from 5 to 6 the council's authority to remove the mayor.
Okay. All right, any further discussion on that amendment proposal? Roll call, please. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just want to clarify one thing, and I apologize for this being so kind of simple. How does this affect what we came here originally tonight to do?
That's a separate vote, if I'm correct, Steve.
Right, there's a separate vote to
Completely.
put it on the ballot.
Completely. Okay, thank you.
So this is just changing the language that's in the ordinance and Exhibit A to the ordinance.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Anything else? Roll call.
Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Ms. Atrap?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godek?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
All right. Are there any other proposals for amendments? Any further discussion regarding the motion to adopt 2025 dash?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing further on that, is that we will have very robust town halls in March or April, and they will be informational whenever
We have to get them in time for the mail-in ballots.
And I guess if we hear something I hadn't thought about this before, but if we hear something that is truly, we made a mistake here, the fact that we can pull this, to me, makes the town halls serve both the informational purposes, and some sharp-eyed citizen found that there's something that doesn't work like it should work, or that despite the steady review of our 9 fine citizens and this council, and all the comments put out, all the comments we received during the 17 public hearings and these meetings, that I think that will suffice, that this is a good process, and I would like to move forward with it at this time, subject to having all those town halls and getting that additional input during the period between when we vote on this and well before the actual vote in May. And I would hope during that period, we have very robust information going out in a very prominent way that gives the citizens all the information they need to really understand what this is, what's in it. And if we hear something like that at those meetings, we still have the ability to make that change.
I would like to ask the mayor to put the discussion of the schedule and the number and the timing of the town halls on next week's agenda for the 28th, I believe it is.
Yes.
Mhm.
Do we need to have is there another vote we need to do, or are we?
Yeah,
No.
we have to put a vote on
We
it.
You haven't
still have
passed
to
the
vote. We
ordinance
haven't passed
yet.
the ordinance.
Oh, we've only passed the amendments.
Correct.
Yes, sir. You've only passed the amendments.
Move to.
No, it's
No,
already.
no, no, he's made a motion.
I
There's
second
been a
it.
second. It's been amended. Now we get to have you vote yea or nay on the ordinance to reference this Charter Review Commission report to a referendum And I'll call the roll. Any further discussion?
I have further discussion. I think the workaround is kind of clunky. I think it's very important that we send a message to our residents that our town halls value their input, that if there are little tweaks we want to make here and there, that we can do that. And I think there might be some changes that would make sense to us that are not in there right now. The idea of we can pull it off the ballot, yeah, I mean, we could do that, but it doesn't really give us the ability to change kind of minor things, or if somebody comes up with something that we feel it makes sense and we want that in there, we're either stuck with pulling it off the ballot altogether and not making that change. And I don't think that was the intention when Mr. Gentili scheduled the town halls prior to the vote of council. I don't think your intention was to come up with a kind of a workaround. I think it's important to show our transparency, and I think it's important when we have a town hall, that the residents know that they have input that's going to be considered and counted.
Mhm.
And I understand that with this process, it sort of does that, but it does it in an odd way that if somebody comes up with something that, ooh, this kind of ruins the whole thing, we can't really change it. We have to pull the whole thing. I have not been convinced of the downside of postponing the vote. I'm up for re-election. I'm not worried about the election, this matter being on the same election as the election for council. I'm not concerned about that. I think we need to send the message to our residents that we are transparent, that we appreciate their input, that this be more than just informational, that we're going to take their input into account before we vote, we put what we're going to put on the ballot.
All right, thank you, Scott.
I would just like to follow up on that. I just want to say, I think we have been extremely transparent, and I think the Charter Review solicited a tremendous amount of information, did a tremendous amount of work. And I think it's really important that we honor and respect that work that the Charter Review Commission gave back to their community. And I think it would be strange to I also am running, it's not relevant to me, but I think it would be strange to put off the work of the Charter Review Commission until November, when they finished in December. I think that would be a really unfair, unjust action. And in other efforts, the last time we had a vote, that would have a response like that, putting it off on the ballot, putting off the walkability, the sidewalk effort for 11 months. The recriminations would have been unbelievable. The attacks on council for putting something off 11 months. There are people in this community who believe that a charter review was warranted and that this was something that was strange that we had not taken on. And I think it's really unfair to put it off for that long. If it was a matter of a month or two, I could see that, but that's just not the way our elections are scheduled in Ohio anymore. There aren't really those August elections that were smaller elections anyway. So I just don't see another way of going about it if we're here.
So we're talking about 5 months, right? 5-6 months.
Well, from when they finish their work.
From May.
Finished in December.
We can't do it before May,
Six.
right?
6 months, and it's 6 months from when they finished in
We
December.
can't put it on the ballot before. May,
No,
correct?
but I think
So
that
the
that's
delay,
reasonable.
with all due respect, the
Mhm.
delay is not a year. The delay is 6 months.
Yes, but it's a year from when they finished their work and their conversation, and it's double the amount of time that we would normally, that we have a first opportunity to do
The
it.
first opportunity is May, correct?
Correct.
The delay is 6 months to.
6
if we
more
would do-
months,
6 months.
6 additional.
6 additional
Right,
months.
but the delay,
The delay
It
is 6
speaks
months,
for itself.
11 months from when they finished their work. 11 months from when they finished their work, almost a full year. And I just think that it's really interesting that we would do this now, but in the past, in other circumstances, we would have been castigated. It would have been horrible if we would have waited that long to put something on the ballot. It seems, I think you put it on the ballot, and when it's here, they did the work. If they wouldn't have finished the work, they wouldn't have finished the work till March or April, I could see that. But it's a very long time.
I believe with the sidewalks, the
looking
town
at it.
halls occurred prior to the referendum initiative being adopted and put on the ballot.
But
I
that's
think
not
the
what we're
town,
talking
well,
about.
the town halls came first. And I must agree with Mr. Newell about whether or not these town halls become a pretense of a town hall. To me, they seem more like a campaign event than a town hall seeking substantive input from residents to inform the council as to what the residents of Pepper Pike, not simply the commission, the 9 people in the commission, but what the residents of Pepper Pike may wish to see included in any charter change. And I think that's unfortunate. I remember back in an early commission meeting when Mr. Gentile informed the commission when they were having some discussion about town halls, that would be up to council to sell, his words, sell any recommendations to the public. Well, I don't think this is a selling event, these town halls. In fact, you can't sell anything that you adopt here to put on the ballot. It cannot be a selling event because we cannot use city resources for that purpose. So I am concerned when I hear that these town halls are going to be subsequent to the council already adopting something and then saying, now let us hear from you residents as to what you think about it. That it's backwards. That it's not the way it should be, council. But it is your decision. I've made my comment about it. And is there anything more in the way of discussion that we're going to have?
Mayor,
tonight?
Just to
just like to
clarify,
say-
that wasn't
I want to say
responsive
that
to what I said.
if I use the word sell, then I meant it in the broadest sense. I meant that we would present the recommendations to the people at the town halls. Then I didn't mean it in terms of, I know we can't take a position and try to sell it using city resources. I know
Right.
that.
I think it's going to be very difficult for council to conduct these town halls, frankly, without advocating for the referendum that it's already adopted. I think that is almost by definition, almost an impossible position that you're placing yourselves in. But
I think some people place themselves in that position during another referendum. So I'll just let that be.
And I just think that the Charter Review Commission, it keeps coming back as some kind of intimation that this is council's recommendation and council's document. This is the recommendation of the Charter Review Commission.
Well, you're
which we
making
all
it,
appointed.
you're making it council's
And we're adopting
recommendation.
it because we believed that we should have a Charter Review Commission review our document.
Right, I
All of us
understand.
voted for at least 5 of these people. They spent
But when you-
hours and hours on it.
I understand, but when you adopt, let's be clear, when you adopt this charter recommendation and advance it to a referendum, because that's what our current charter says or ordinance says, this is, and as it's been pointed out, council could make changes to this, and you have made, some limited changes to it. This becomes council's document that it is advancing. It will have the background of the Charter Commission's input, but this becomes Charter Council's promotion of this referendum or this document into a referendum onto the ballot. That's what this becomes. This is not the Charter Commission putting this on a ballot. This is the council putting it on a ballot.
It is literally the council adopting the recommendation of the Charter Review Commission. The document recommendation of the Charter Review Commission to put on the ballot, which is why I'm opposed to changing it substantively and putting too much of our handprint on this. This is their recommendation. We kept our hands off of it as it was suggested.
And we can debate that. That will become a subsequent debate, perhaps.
It
How
shouldn't.
much
That
of the
would be
fingerprints of council are on it.
Very
That's a
disingenuous.
subsequent debate.
Well, that would be misinformation and disinformation and very disingenuous if anybody elected in this community put that information out there. That would be really shameful and really
Okay.
an embarrassing
is there any-
embarrassment as far as.
Is there
integrity.
anything more to discuss before this?
I would like to, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
I would hate that my remarks that I made about the Charter Review Commission be in any way construed that I was maligning them in any way. I started off by saying how much I appreciate the work they did. My request is not, I don't think because we have not had a chance to have the town halls that we originally planned on having. We haven't had them.
I understand.
I'm going to read you right what I said. I supported and still support the Charter Review. My request is that we simply take a little bit more time. It's that important to me. It's important to me that we give our residents another chance other than while the commission was working on its process. That now that it's done and now that people do see it, as Councilmember Godek said, as more of a thing, it becomes more of a real thing. It's just that it's been 60 years, the charter, the way it has been. 60.
I know.
To put this forward another 6 months, I don't know about you, but I think it's reasonable. It then allows us to have that town hall meetings that are going to be both informational and gather information from the residents. It will be informational both ways. That's the one thing that I've thought about this for a long time. I have supported this process, as you well know.
I understand.
And to even hint that this is in any way denigrating the commission is.
I don't think that you were denigrating
incorrect.
the commission, Scott. I do not think that you were denigrating the commission. I think that some people have denigrated the commission, but not you. We just differ on our view on how much the commission has, how much outreach and how many opportunities and what that means as far as the document as it stands. But as far as you denigrating the commission, I do not think you individually are denigrating the commission. It's just to make that clear, I would feel terrible if that was seemed to be
I
implied.
appreciate that very much. I do, though, believe, just from my own personal experience of the residents that have been recently contacting me with all sorts of questions, they want to know more about this. They want to know more about this. And when we start hearing more from them about it, we may get some insights as to if we want to make sure that this passes or a good version of this passes. It's important to have their input. The National Civic League spells it out almost word for word like that. The more you work with the residents, the closer you get to something that is going to work for everybody. That's all I'm asking here. I think a small delay and I do believe this is a small delay, is warranted in this case. We keep our promise of having the town halls prior to the vote the council takes. That means something to me. I guess everybody has to make their own decision.
Anything more? All right. And we'll have a roll call on the motion to adopt.
Mr. Knoll,
No.
Ms. Datra,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Govic,
No.
Mr. Lemay,
Yes.
Mr. Gentili.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, council.
We'll get the amendments to Sheila. She'll be out of town until next Tuesday. It'll probably go down to the Board of Elections. We're way ahead of schedule to get that, but we'll get it signed into the Board of Elections by next week.
Can I make a brief, just very brief? I want to be very clear. I support this document and I will do everything I can to talk to people I know, answer questions and get it passed.
Thank you. All right. I'm informed by our law director that I do not have the entitlement to veto this legislation. Is that correct, Mr.
That's
Law
right.
Director?
That's right.
I do have very significant concerns about the process by which this was undertaken at the beginning. I continue to, I think a lot of my apprehensions that were expressed in my initial veto measure have come to realization. I think that this was a problem, a resolution, a solution in search of a problem. I do not agree with many of the recommendations made in this document. I do not agree with the removal of the mayor from the planning commission. I think that was wrong. I think it's contrary to what almost every municipality in the state of Ohio has. I think it's wrong that council should have whatever the number of votes necessary, the ability to overcome the election of a mayor by the populace and remove a mayor. Goodbye, Mr. Gentili. I'm sorry you're leaving.
I'm not leaving.
And there are a number of other concerns that I have in this document. I think a good process, and I think it was not appropriate for the mayor not to have an independent selection onto the board, onto the commission. I think that negatively affected the composition of the commission and the directions that it took. And if I had the opportunity, given the input I have received back from the community about these recommendations, I believe I would have vetoed this legislation. I don't have that opportunity. So now it is going to become a matter of election and election politics. I am hoping that everyone will be respectful of each other and that we can try to avoid a divisive election between now and the spring. I think that would be very unfortunate for the city of Pepper Pike, and that we can have discussions about the pros and the cons. I think there are, good qualities, some that were suggested in these charter changes. It's not like the whole document is for naught. I think there are many, useful things in it. And I'll have much more to say about that later. I think that the drive of this document has essentially been to dramatically change the relationship between the mayor and the city council so far as the way the city operates. I think it essentially advocates a school board or a city manager model.
I'm back, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome back, Mr. Gentili. A school board or a city manager model in which the mayor essentially reports to the council as a superintendent would report to a school board, or a city manager would report to a council, although we will still have an elected mayor who performs administrative tasks. I think that it removes the mayor from the being the presiding officer of the city, which I think is very unfortunate. I think our city has prospered and excelled for 60 years in the way we do government. Last week, Mr. LeMay, I think, effectively commented that nothing's broken at Pepper Pike in the way we operate. We have it's not that we need more guideline or guardrails. I think we have effective guardrails right now. I think that the budget process and the way that the government operates is very effective. I believe that rather than chase other communities as to how they do things, that they should be looking to Pepper Pike as to how we do things. We're the community that is most successful among our peers and among those who are, in the communities immediately adjacent to us and throughout Cuyahoga County. Those are the communities that currently look to Pepper Pike for leadership and guidance as to how we are so successful. And I think that as also was commented, but our government is not, it's not nirvana, I believe the word was. There's nothing in these recommendations or empirically that tells me that if these changes are adopted, that we will find nirvana. We will simply find an alternative way. And I'm not saying that these are not alternative ways. You can operate the government the way these proposed changes to our charter describe. But we are repealing the charter and replacing it with a dramatically different way of operating. And it is, we cannot hide from that. That is what is being described here. And it may be good or it may be bad, but that is up for the residents of the Pepper Pike ultimately to decide in an upcoming election. And they'll decide that. But it is different. It's a lot different. And that is something that people are going to have to decide. This is not incremental change. This is not change because particular problems were identified. What was identified was alternative ways of doing things. And yes, you can do things alternatively in a different way. Question is, why are we taking a flyer on alternative ways when we have a manner and method that is highly successful? This government has, and the city has survived through problems in the past. And if anything, through our overcoming them and our success, I think has demonstrated that what we do is successful and it does work. If there are currently conflicts between personalities in our elected officials, that's always unfortunate. I wish it wasn't that way. But that is a matter of personalities. That is fixed either through the individuals or through the electorate by changing what individuals are sitting in a seat. It's not the manner. You do not change the structure of a government, in my opinion, because of personality conflicts. That's not what we do. And I think it's unfortunate that we apparently have gotten to that step. I hope that I look forward to working with council in the coming months in a productive way. I don't want to see our wonderful progress as a city distracted by, a charter election that's upcoming. I think we still have very important things to accomplish in the months ahead. And that is what I'm going to try to focus my attention on, rather than getting involved in debates with my fellow elected officials about what coulda, shoulda, woulda. And I invite all of you to join with me to continue to be effective legislators, and I will endeavor to continue to be an effective chief executive of the city. And hopefully we can work together in the coming months to effectively guide this city into even better things.
I mean, are you finished? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Since you invoked my prior comments, I need to respond. Rick, I did say the city wasn't broken, but there are aspects of how the city operates that aren't working nearly as well as they should. And those aspects are really around communication, about the independence of various parts of the city government. So as I evoked last time, it's continuous improvement. We can always do things better. And what the commission recommended is not taking a flyer. Having a president of council who presides is the reigning form of government in about 80% of the municipalities in Cuyahoga County and many of our neighbors. And they have adopted that president of council form of government and kept with it because it provides important benefits, important structural benefits to better communication, better collaboration, better participation by the electorate on all numerous fronts. All those other cities have adopted that because it lets the city work even better. We are a successful city. We are not broken as a city, but we can run better. And that's why I'm supporting this charter.
Thank you. Can I turn to any audience comments at this point? Mr. Leskovic.
First of all, I agree with Tony. Disagreement is not disrespect. Please keep that in mind as I go through my comments, because I mean no disrespect to this council, the commission, or even any former council or commission. And as you say, opinion is not fact. So I start out by saying, in my view, the communication and transparency of the process left a lot to be desired. In communication, although there were numerous letters, emails, and postings, in my view, they were pretty much perfunctory, stilted, and worthy messages, aka not sexy. Messages need to be clear, simple, and more dry. Why they important? They were not. People do not understand that basically a change in government or a change in charter equates to a change in government. A side note, talking with one of the commission people, saying why they don't get response, and then you gotta tell people what you're doing, which is basically narrowing the current structure of the city apart and building a new structure. If you tell people that, maybe you'll get somebody's attention and they'll understand the gravity of what's going on. Now the meeting, I tried to attend as many meetings as I could. I'm retired, so I have a great deal of flexibility. I still would not make all of them, and even a couple of the meetings I attended, the chairman would not make the meeting, and so the meeting was scheduled because it was compressed. The time of the year it was held, the holidays, the shortness of scheduling, the times of day, quite honestly, made it very, very difficult for most people to attend. And that's why, there were 30 people who applied who did not end up on the commission. There weren't a whole lot of them there. I also think that for some reason, the commission is used broadcasting and recording their meetings. And it's like nobody knew about YouTube. And why, I don't understand. And I think the council was remiss and on insisting on this because a recording are very different than minutes. There is a time delay on minutes. There is simplified, for lack of a better term, and there is standardized, and they're much more difficult for people to work with than recording. You know, you can listen to a recording while you're driving, eating dinner, doing whatever. If you miss a meeting, when you read a document, it needs full time and attention. So I think a failure to communicate, it was very apparent to me. Although I think the council was remiss and not requiring a member of the German of the commission to be available for a town hall meeting, to respond to questions that are brought in, because there was never, they never, yes, they do get that, but there was never a town hall meeting back and forth. No one ever responded to my comments directly, okay? And whereas in a town hall environment, they will do that. So I think, no process is gonna be more perfect, but I think a lot more could have been done, to engage the residents and to let them know what was happening. And, despite, yes, it was a lot of hard work done, but, a little more effort, would have got a much more transparency of what happened out there. The other issue I have, and I won't comment on any of the specifics of the, work product, because we have limited time, but I would have liked to see a number of the major issues in this broken out and put on a ballot, particularly the planning and zoning and the appointment of a president of council, which are the two big ticket items in here. Now, I know council had a tremendous amount of input in this document. I mean, Mr. Lemay actually submitted draft languages to the commission for parts of it during the meeting. So, it's not like you guys didn't have your hands in it. And so I can understand you're strongly supporting it, but I think Mr. Newell is right. The public should have a real opportunity to comment on this before it was voted on. And I think the fact that these bars aren't split out, can make it difficult for voters, because you might agree with part of it, but not agree with another part. Now, for me, it's simple. When in doubt, vote no. Because there's nothing in here that has a clear and present danger. And I've always felt that when you reject something at the ballot, if it's really valuable, it'll come back again. And so, there is no harm in saying no. But it's not, whatever happens, I wish everybody the best. And that's over tonight, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Liskowicz. Anyone else? Not seeing any more comments. This meeting is adjourned.
Tell me why I do this.
How many terms have you been doing?
I'll wise up. My wife wants me to wise up.